Steve Lachnicht is the director of the Alachua County Growth Management Department and has been with the county for over 10 years. Prior to coming to Alachua County, he was a planning director for a private planning firm in Martin County, Florida, and an environmental planner and senior planner for Martin County. He has a Master's of Public Administration from Florida State University and a Bachelor of Science degree in Environmental Studies from Florida International University. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Mark.
We're doing a series, kind of a civic education thing, where we're going to try to interview every department head in the county, and you're the lucky first guest that we have in this series. Growth management is, a very interesting subject, and it's been, particularly in the last couple of meetings that I've been to, it has played very heavy in the meetings and on the agendas. Let's start by just telling us what is the vision of the Alachua County Growth Management Department, the vision statement.
Sure. Well, I'll just read that for you.
Okay.
The vision statement is to create a built environment that makes efficient use of land, promotes multimodal transportation, protects natural resources with social equity and economic prosperity, and provides for safe and affordable housing.
And I assume that vision statement is kind of an offshoot of the vision of the Alachua County Commission as they have articulated over the last several years?
Absolutely. The vision is captured in our policies. Our policies are primarily defined and adopted in our comprehensive plan.
Right. And the Growth Management Department in general, what does it do? We'll get to the comp plan in just a little while,
Sure.
and I know that's a big subject, but what does the department do?
Well, the department provides a range of services to support that vision, promoting economic prosperity, a sustainable community, preserving natural resources, social equity. We do this through a whole series of regulations and enforcement. We have the comprehensive plan. We also have the land development regulations. We have building permits, which are done in the Florida Building Code. We have code enforcement functions, where this is for violations of the building code or for nuisance type or health hazards such as abandoned cars or junk that accumulates that needs to be removed. We have affordable housing program, which provides assistance to people that need assistance either for access to or for purchasing a home or for making repairs to a home which is in poor condition. For necessities such as a roof over the heads. You know, a leaking roof obviously would be a critical function.
Well, let's actually, why don't we talk about your divisions and kind of break down one by one. You mentioned building permits.
Yes.
Who needs a building permit? What is it? What are the activities that kind of kick in needing a building permit in Alachua County?
The building permits are determined by the Florida Building Code. It would cover any significant improvement to any home or business or office building. The typical applicant is a contractor, although owner builders can also be applicants. And our staff is ready to help guide those owner builders through that process. If you're doing work with electrical or plumbing or just carpentry work in your home, it's always good to check and see if you need a building permit. But typically anything with electrical or plumbing would certainly need it. Some repairs would need a permit, some may not, but it's always better to check first so we don't have to visit you with our code enforcement officer later.
So if you're a citizen, you can call, and we'll be putting your phone numbers on the screen throughout the show. Your staff is available.
You can call or you can contact us through our website, by email. We try to be available by any avenue you wish to contact us.
And you know, one thing, and I don't know if this is an easy question or not, but I assume for building permits we're talking about the unincorporated area of the county, is that correct?
The jurisdiction of our land development regulations and our permitting is the unincorporated parts of Alachua County, the areas that are not incorporated into the municipalities. Now, we do actually provide service to some of the municipalities, particularly for building permitting. So we have contracts with certain municipalities, and we certainly welcome doing that. I think it's good to have that continuity of service in the county.
And for those municipalities who contract with you, they use the same codes that apply to the unincorporated area?
The Florida Building Code is universal in the state.
I see.
And so the enforcement and the inspection process is the same. Mm-hmm. And it's very simple. If you're in one of those municipalities, you would just come to the county office to obtain your permit. The contractors are aware of this, of course.
Uh-huh.
And the inspections and everything would be just the same as if you were in Alachua County.
I see. Code enforcement is another one of your responsibilities, I know. Code enforcement obviously means enforcing the codes, but what kinds of things are you looking for in code enforcement?
Well, code enforcement is narrowly defined in the sense of code enforcement for pursuing either complaints or health violations that may exist out in the field, in the built environment. This could be a junk car that's abandoned. This could be a violation of the building code. It could be somebody constructs a structure or a building that wasn't permitted properly. We typically seek compliance. It's not about punishment, it's about compliance. We go and we try to find remedies to those situations. In most cases we can. We can work with the owners in these properties and come to agreement. In those instances where we cannot, there's a Citizens Code Enforcement Board which we would take those cases to, and they would then decide how to adjudicate the violations.
Well, and that's an important thing to know, is that your first goal is to just get folks to do what they're supposed to be doing.
And that is we do achieve that in most cases.
Comprehensive planning. Now, is that a division in your office?
It's a division, but it's also an umbrella policy, if you would, for our department, and in some respects for the county's government. This is our comprehensive plan here. And you can see it's more than just a policy statement. It's actually a
20 pounds.
Fairly substantial document. It has many different elements. It covers a wide range of things. Most of the discussion that we have is typically around the land use function, which is the largest element of it, but it does cover things such as sanitary sewer, transportation, affordable housing, economic development, natural resource protection are all covered within the comprehensive plan.
And I'm going to go back to the comprehensive plan, but I want to kind of finish an overview of the other things you do. I know development review is a very important part of what you do. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we have the comprehensive plan policies, which set out the general framework for what then are adopted locally as land development regulations. That's another book the same size as this one, and that gets down to specific details as how you construct, how you design a project. And this is both the horizontal, as we say, the way the streets and the infrastructure is laid out, but also the vertical mix of units and types you might have, separations, specific criteria for how you develop property. The development review function is when you look at the site plans or development plans that are submitted by applicants. This could be for a subdivision, it could be for retail or institutional uses, and also for mixed uses where we combine some of those types of uses together in one project.
Mm-hmm. So when folks are watching you on TV, and you and your staff are usually the star of the show on the evening portion of the county commission meetings, the public hearings on the second and fourth Tuesday of the month, when they hear you throwing out LDR, those are the land development regulations.
Land development regulations is kind of the generic name. It's actually the Unified Land Development Code, ULDC. You'll also hear that one occasionally.
Uh-huh.
That's our specific title for our code. Those hearings that you see with the Board of County Commissioners are most frequently zoning hearings.
Okay.
They could be for special use permits. They could be for plan developments. They could be for DRIs or for comprehensive plan amendments. They all go through the Board of County Commissioner public hearing process. A lot of the development plans we do, though, do not have to go to Board of County Commissioners. The plans that are consistent with our comprehensive plan and consistent with our LDRs as dictated in the document go right to the Development Review Committee, which is a staff committee that, it's a public meeting, but it's not televised, but it assures compliance with the LDRs and with the comprehensive plan to achieve those goals.
So it's only when there's some sort of request being made to alter the regulations or
Well,
alter the zoning that it goes to a commission meeting? Or
there's different categories of request, and there are thresholds. And at some point, well, if you need to change, okay, there's comprehensive plan defines land use, which is the broadest category, and that's approved in our comprehensive plan. It's a requirement through the state. It's enforced through the Department of Community Affairs in Tallahassee. So when we adopt changes or amendments to our comprehensive plan, they go through a fairly detailed process with the Department of Community Affairs. The LDRs are adopted locally. They are required to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, but they are adopted and controlled locally. The Department of Community Affairs would not intervene in our LDRs. The types of applications that need to go to public hearing with the board are when you change a zoning. Now, a zoning is part of the LDR. It is a local jurisdiction. Typically, a zoning is a more discrete subset of a land use. So you might have one land use for low-density residential, but you might have 3 or 4 zoning districts with narrower divisions within that 1 to 4. So you might have a 1 to 2 and a 1 to 3 density zonings, where you might have a zoning for a particular type of use, like a manufactured home.
So, you know, I can see now that it's all very kind of intertwined. Why don't we step back a moment? Does every county, the 67 counties in the state of Florida, have a growth management department? Is that a...
It's typically they do, although there are some variations of what's in or not in or how you might title that department. But certainly the functions, the requirement to have a comprehensive plan would be for all the counties. And in fact, all municipalities also have to have comprehensive plans. So at some level, they do comprehensive planning.
So, and obviously the comprehensive plan varies from county to county, depending on
Yes.
what the elected officials and the staff and citizens' input comes up with.
The statutes lay out very specific elements that must be included in your comprehensive plan, and topics that need to be addressed, such as the provision of the land use provisions, the water, the sanitary, the transportation. There are other elements, though, that are optional. And Alachua County, for instance, has the economic element, which is an optional element. We're also in the process now of adopting 2 new elements, a health element and an energy element, which are also optional elements which go beyond the requirements of the statute. And the health element specifically addresses the access to health facilities in the community. The energy element is very interesting. It's really a very forward-looking element dealing with the utilization of energy resources in the community. This can affect everything from the pattern of land use development to the use of automobiles to the way the county functions in terms of its own facilities. As you know, we've made great efforts in the last several years to greatly improve the efficiency of all the county buildings.
Now, Steve, I've heard you describe the comp plan as kind of a blueprint for the future. So is there a finite time frame that the comp plan is looking at? This is our blueprint for what period of time?
We normally plan for a 20-year time horizon, although many of the policies in the comprehensive plan may have longer implications. We do an update to the comprehensive plan every 7 years as dictated by statute. That's called the evaluation and appraisal report process.
And we're in the middle of that process.
We're toward the end of that process. We've spent several years now. We've had hundreds of meetings, both informal and formal, with the community, with different interest groups, with the county commissioners, with the local planning agency, also known as the Planning Commission. We compiled a list of areas of concern. That was adopted. We then developed the EAR document, the Evaluation Appraisal Report, and described those things in much more detail and did research to support those. That was then adopted. And now we've prepared the final step in that, and that is actually making revisions to the comprehensive plan. This includes adding those additional 2 new elements, the health element and the energy element, but it also includes many revisions to some of the other policies in the comprehensive plan that we have found ways to improve. It's a document that's always in need of revisions as we go forward. It has, as our understanding of the built environment and as the community changes over time, one would expect there to be changes to the comprehensive plan.
Now, when this process, the EAR process is complete, will that herald the beginning of a new 20-year period, or?
Yeah, we basically update the 20. Like I say, the 20-year period is defined as a kind of a broad outline of what you're focusing on, and it does come into play specifically when we're looking at analysis of the capacity for new development, like within our urban cluster area, where we direct new development towards. But most of the policies in the comprehensive plan are more generalized than that and don't necessarily have timeframes associated with them.
So if I'm looking at a picture of the county, does the comp plan kind of fill in what the county will look like 20 years from now? I mean, does it deal with agriculture will be
Yes.
here and high density will be there? And can you kind of give us a broad view of that?
One of the more important concepts in the comprehensive plan is the urban cluster boundary. The areas, well, City of Gainesville is at the center of our county. The areas that are closest to the City of Gainesville, which happen to align primarily with I-75 to the west and with the East Gainesville area to the east, are the areas of the urban cluster where the county intends to provide public services. That would be water and sewer, and to some extent other public services. The areas beyond that line are defined as agricultural or rural, and in those areas we would hope to maintain and preserve that rural characteristic, not extending water and sewer, not developing at the higher densities. A lot of that, the county also has defined strategic ecosystems, broad areas within the county, primarily in the rural areas, which contain significant environmental resources. And in 2002, we developed policies specifically targeted at creating special protections for those areas.
So I guess it's safe to say that some of the comp plans in some of the major cities in South Florida are different than our comp plan, or I guess maybe
Oh, yes.
our commissioners and our citizens have had a different vision, perhaps.
Well, there's two sides to that. I mean, one side is they are dealing with different conditions.
Right.
Obviously, a coastal county would be different than an inland county for a lot of reasons. But there's also difference in the demographics. There's differences in the built environment that exist in those areas. You know, I've spent some time, lived and worked in some of those South Florida areas. Definite differences in the way you would have to go about doing certain things. You know, there are lots of municipalities in South Florida that are completely landlocked by other municipalities.
Right.
And so there's a different outlook on these issues. And the built environment does dictate a lot of the form. Now, the citizen involvement has been critical here in Alachua County. I always take pride in the fact that we have a very active citizenry here. It wasn't always the case in other places where I have worked. I've not seen the level of involvement and the level of understanding that I see in Alachua County. And it helps to have a major university at the core of your county, obviously, to ensure a steady supply of those citizens ready to participate in the process.
Well, and that is the sign of a very involved citizen who will take the time to pick up this document and read it and understand it and participate in the meetings. So we've talked about the City of Gainesville at the center. We have the kind of urban area that extends into the county,
Right.
but there are boundaries on that.
Right.
And then you're dealing with unincorporated area and other municipalities.
Sure.
Does every municipality have its own comp plan?
Yes,
as
they
well?
do. And they have local control over their land development regulations also. We do coordinate. Intergovernmental coordination is a very important function of the county. Whenever we do amendments to our comprehensive plan, we send out copies or invitations, if you would, to those other communities to participate. The outlying municipalities also will include us with their actions, and sometimes we comment, sometimes we offer suggestions. Coordination is always a desirable outcome. You know, if we can have similar policies and similar outcomes, I think that's better for everyone.
But our policies, our comp plan, are there any areas that apply countywide, or is it strictly unincorporated, or those municipalities that have kind of opted in, or?
The land development is almost entirely in the unincorporated area when we talk about those type of policies. There are policies that are more broadly defined in our comprehensive plan, although they take on a different avenues, if you would, in terms of enforcement. Like some of the requirements, for instance, we recently, like the last couple of years, adopted a school concurrency element, which had to be coordinated with each one of the 9 municipalities. It had to be adopted basically at the same time with all the other municipalities in the county. So the intergovernmental coordination was a critical factor there, because the school boundaries do not follow the municipal boundaries. So obviously there was a necessity to have that type of coordination.
I see. We hear a lot about, we hear the terms urban sprawl or suburban sprawl, and I know that that's a factor that is of great concern to many citizens in Alachua County, and our county commission frequently has discussions about that. How does the comp plan address that?
The addressing suburban sprawl or urban sprawl is a primary function in the comprehensive plan. It's defined by statute as one of our goals, and it's actually broken down into like 13 components. The sprawl is generally defined as being isolated land uses, low density, inefficient land use patterns. It could be low density subdivisions that cover broad areas. It requires a great dependence upon the automobile. It's not a very inclusive picture. It typically has very stark divisions between communities and between commercial and retail and these other types of uses. It's characterized by buffers and wide multi-lane streets and limited access between communities. We've strived in Alachua County to change that pattern of development, to be more a multimodal approach, and that means providing transit, providing opportunities for pedestrian and for bicycles in a community. It means developing at higher densities proximate to the provision of those facilities. It means preserving land in the rural areas and areas with sensitive ecosystems, to build more intensely in those areas where it's appropriate and less so in areas where it's not to just spread it out across the land, to use the land more efficiently.
There's been a lot of talk lately about the mobility plan, and I know we could do a whole half an hour just on that.
I've seen a few of those presentations.
Yeah. Can you just give us a quick synopsis of transportation planning as an element of what you all do, and the mobility plan in particular?
Well, the Growth Management Department coordinates very closely with our Public Works Department in transportation, and we have 2 planners on staff that focus on transportation planning. This multimodal approach is something of a change. In most places in the state, the focus is still on the automobile and making sure the roads are wide enough to accommodate the volume of traffic. Well, that's proven to be an unsustainable model. You can't build enough road lanes to accommodate all the traffic if you keep directing all the traffic onto those few roads. So we focus on things like connectivity between all new developments. So there's lots of alternative roadways to connect and get through and between projects and communities. With that connectivity comes opportunities for bicycle and pedestrian travel. And also in that design, the transit-oriented design, is the idea of having nodes of concentrated areas of mixed use, commercial, residential, all together at more intensive densities, where transit could be provided efficiently between those nodes. And we've defined a map in our comprehensive plan that now shows where that's going to be for the next 10, 20, and even 30 years out. That's a big change. It's something that we're hoping that we see other communities in the state adopt.
And certainly I don't think there's much argument in this community that eventually the future will demand these kinds of solutions.
It's extremely it's much easier to do these things before you build than after.
Right.
Retrofitting a community is seldom a pretty sight.
Steve, I know that affordable housing assistance is another element that your office provides. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, there's numerous ways that we provide affordable housing assistance. There's different grants we get from the state or from the federal government that provide opportunities for first-time purchasers, assistance with mortgage, and also for repairs to homes, certainly in emergency situations such as a leaking roof where the homeowner is unable to afford to make the necessary improvements. And there's other health and safety things. I've had an opportunity to visit some of these homes, and it's really encouraging to see people that are assisted by us. And that is countywide. We do work in municipalities in addition to the county. Depending on the sources of the grants and the funding, we have different opportunities to provide it. One particular program that we've done recently is a neighborhood stabilization program. And this came down from the federal government through HUD, through the state, and we have been able to purchase 20 foreclosed homes in the area of the county, in certain areas of the county which had high foreclosure rates. We've taken these very distressed properties, typically in very poor condition. They're now undergoing extensive rehabilitation. They will then be sold or rented to qualified buyers that have low incomes, with the idea of bringing back those neighborhoods, not having that derelict house on a street, and at the same time an opportunity for affordable housing and a quality home.
Which lifts the whole neighborhood, I would think.
That is the intent of the program.
Yeah. And you mentioned income. I assume that's the qualifier. There are income levels.
They have to be either low or very low income levels, depending on how many children you have. There's different numbers. Anybody who thinks they might be qualified or just curious about that is welcome to contact our office.
And very quickly, how can citizens get involved? We're down to a couple of minutes here, but can you tell us the advisory boards that your office helps with?
Our office assists with 6 different advisory boards. We have the Planning Commission, which hears all the zoning cases. We have the Historical Commission, which provides input to both the county and the city commission on historical issues. We have the Rural Concerns Advisory Committee for a wide range of issues. Affordable Housing has an advisory committee, and a Housing Finance Authority is also a program, a group we administer. And finally, an Economic Development Advisory Committee is something we provide staff support for.
I appreciate you being here. What you do can get to be very complicated, but you've helped me understand it a lot. Thank you.
It's a pleasure, Mark.